Hello, I'm Linda Lenzke, Program Advocate for the Outreach LGBTQ Community Center in Madison, Wisconsin, and moderator for the Road Forward, a virtual workshop series made possible by a grant from the New Harvest Foundation with additional support from All of Us research program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. In the spring of 2021, the Road Forward hosted a series of virtual workshops and skill development programs to address COVID-19 pandemic's impact on our LGBTQ+ community and offer a roadmap for the post-pandemic road forward. The Recovering Mental Health Workshop assessed the needs of our marginalized and often underserved LGBTQ+ community regarding COVID-19's impact on mental health, substance, and alcohol use, which was followed by a second workshop when we shared the tools and resources for the post-pandemic road forward. Tanya Kraege, the Drug Poisoning Prevention Recovery Coach Team Manager at Safe Communities MDC, and a mental health clinician at Journey Mental Health in the Crisis Unit, developed and facilitated the workshop. Outreach would like to thank the New Harvest Foundation, All of Us, and Tanya Kraege for making Recovering Our Mental Health possible. Please view and share the video presentation and tools and resources. Outreach will launch a series of in-person support groups made possible by a grant from the Madison Gas and Electric Foundation, featuring our three topic areas: restoring our lives, recovering our mental health, and protecting our health.
So we are recording. So welcome everyone to the Road Forward workshop. And tonight we're very pleased to have Tanya Kraege here, who's going to be facilitating Recovering Our Mental Health. I'm going to talk a little bit before we start, before we hand it off to Tanya, a little bit about the Road Forward program and a little bit about Tanya Kraege, what her credentials are and why we're so lucky to have her here tonight. I'm going to read from my notes because that way I won't miss anything. The Road Forward is an outreach LGBTQ+ community center initiative made possible by a grant from the New Harvest Foundation with additional support from All of Us. The Road Forward is a series of virtual education and skill development programs targeted to our underserved and marginalized LGBTQ+, homeless, transgender, gender nonconforming, LGBTQ+ seniors, LGBTQ's communities of color, and LGBTQ+ individuals struggling with behavioral health, substance use, and alcohol. Outreach has partnered with financial advisors, healthcare, mental health, and AODA human service professionals like our guest facilitator tonight, to develop the workshop programs that will first assess the needs, which we did in an earlier workshop. And then today we're going to talk about possible tools and resources to address the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on our lives and offer a roadmap for the post-pandemic road forward. Those tools and resources we will post on the Road Forward website. So I will make sure that every participant will get an email reminder when those tools and resources are available for download. We already received a really comprehensive reading list from one of our community partners, the Madison Public Library. So now I'd like to introduce Tanya Kraege, and I'm going to read again because I don't want to miss any elements of her resume. So our Recovering Our Mental Health Workshop facilitator leader is Tanya Kraege. She, her, or hers are her preferred pronouns. She is the Drug Poisoning Prevention Recovery Coach Team Manager at Safe Communities MDC. And if that wasn't enough, a clinician at Journey Mental Health in the Crisis Unit. She specializes in working with people with substance use challenges, women using substances while pregnant, trauma, relationships, and mental health challenges. Tanya has worked in the field of mental health and substance use for 13 years and currently oversees recovery coaches and certified peer specialists who work in a variety of environments in Dane County to support people with substance use disorders, mental health, and families affected by substance use disorders and mental health challenges. So thank you so much, Tanya, for being with us tonight. And I'm going to hand it off to you and let me know if you are successful in posting your presentation and sharing it with us. And if not, I will make sure I get some help to make sure that we can do that.
Sure. Thanks, Linda. So I'd like to start off tonight because to me, it was like a little bit more than talking to people, you know, or at people. I like to talk with them. And so to get to know you all a little bit better, my audience here, I just have a few short questions, like introduce yourself, your name, where are you from, like what city, where were you born, what brings you here today, what sparked your interest in coming to this workshop today, if you're willing to share that. And then the overarching question, the big one, is if you could take 3 things to a desert island, what would they be and why? So whoever wants to start, go ahead. I know Joe's chomping, so if somebody else wants to start.
I can start.
Okay.
Hey everybody, my name is Joseph Gailey. I am a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorder and mental health conditions. One reason I came tonight is because I seen Tanya was presenting, and I have the honor and privilege of working underneath her. She is my supervisor at Safe Communities. I am a recovery coach and a certified peer specialist. And if I had to pick 3 things to take on a desert island, it would be me, myself, and I. Because that's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe.
Christy, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Christy Mason, and I'll be starting at Outreach on Monday as the LGBTQ senior advisor, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I identify as a person in recovery. I identify as a lesbian. I identify as a lot of things, just depends on what mood you catch me in. And if I could take 3 things to a desert island, I think I would take my dog, probably 2 really juicy books. I don't know what books I would take. I have a bunch of favorites, and I'd probably take one of my favorite books that I've read over and over again. So yeah, and I'm from Madison. I've been here for 30 years. So
Great. Thank you. Hi, I'm Linda Lenzke, and I'm currently the LGBTQ plus AODA advocate for Outreach. I'm originally from Racine, Wisconsin, and I am a person in recovery. In fact, this month in May, I celebrate 36 years of recovery, of course, one day at a time, some more challenging than others. And I'm very grateful that I was able to turn my avocation into my vocation. I worked in other kinds of things for most of my career, and to be able to work with outreach and to work on this topic is really a gift for me. So the other thing I wanted to mention is this weekend I just did peer-to-peer counseling training with NAMI. So I'm ready to practice some of the skills that I learned. 3 things that I would take on an island. I would have to have a box of pens. I'm going to count that as one thing because I'm sure that I would be doing a lot of writing, and I would have to have a ream of paper. I'm going to count that as one thing because I would need a lot of paper. And then this just surprised me when I thought about it. I am not a musician. I don't play an instrument, but someone gifted me a ukulele. So I think I would take the ukulele and learn how to play, or at least entertain myself.
I think you gotta have a ukulele on an island, right? It just like goes with the genre. Uh, Thanks everyone for sharing. As Linda said, that I'm from Madison. Pretty much, I consider myself to be a native to Madison, Dane County. I've lived here off and on since I was a child, depending on whose house I was living in at the time. I moved around quite a bit. I'm also a person in long-term recovery, and I've been on that journey for about 14 years. And really what I consider that journey to be is one of growth and discovery, authenticity, and transparency. And part of that journey for me was exploring my sexual orientation outside of the confines of evangelical religion for me. So that was a challenge. That was like the overhead barrier for me to like really exploring some of that Christianity that came through there. My 3 things that I would take on a desert island. I won't count my family as things because they're humans, so I'm hoping they get to come with me. And my pets too, they're living, so I guess they get to come with me, but I'm not going to include them in my 3 things. It would probably be my book collection, and then I'd want my cell phone, not so I can like connect with the outside world so much, but because I like research. I know that's weird, but I like to read about like what's happening in evidence-based practices and what's the newest and best ways to like work with people that have the best outcomes. And I feel like if I was on a desert island, I would feel real disconnected from research. And then my 3rd thing would be either a soccer ball or a volleyball, because it would give me something to do. And my phone could have music on it, because I don't think I could live without music. So part of this is really talking about like connection, right? Like we're connecting with one another, we're getting to know each other on a different level, which is part of the biggest challenges that we face during COVID-19, right? The disconnect from whether that be our peers or our everyday lives, our coworkers that we might enjoy sometimes. Some of us might have enjoyed a break from them, but after a while it becomes redundant, and it can almost feel like we were incarcerated during COVID-19, even though incarceration looks a lot different than us being in our homes and having access to things that give us comfort and maybe a little bit of joy. It's not the same as being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, Linda, let's go out to dinner, and we can do that and do it safely. Particularly when we're looking at being marginalized populations, right, that may not have the same access to insurance or healthcare services as maybe some other people might. So really looking at that and that despair, like, do I have enough money today to feed my family, and do I have enough money to even go to the ER if I have to, or if I'm not feeling well? And so a lot of those things have faced our community, as well as like what I perceive to be like that collective grief, right? We're all going through it, and we're all going through it differently at different stages, but it's showing up kind of in that second phase right now of either, during COVID, I started to drink a little bit during the day, and then I noticed that I was like drinking every day, and that was different than maybe what someone would have done, had they not been in this pandemic. So, and that kind of became normalized through a lot of like social media platforms and things like that, where people were laughing about it. They're like, oh, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, which has always been a joke since I was a young person. But that was really becoming prevalent. And so people are having more of those consequences kind of show up in their life more today than they would have in the past. So I'm gonna share my screen a little bit. What I put together was just kind of a compilation, and I'll talk a little bit about where that came from. And we can talk like at any time if you have questions along the way. Like, this is a conversation, like please feel free to chime in, put it in the chat if you don't feel like you're interrupting. At any point I stop talking, just interject. Like, let's not have this be too weird, and not like it's your space too, because it is. So I should go into presentation mode, or you're going to see every other thing on my screen. From current slide. So this is the part of a 3-part series that Linda and Outreach has put together for us. I'm in charge of recovering our mental health. So looking at how do we come out of something that has impacted us in so many different ways. A time of introspection that could potentially, for those who weren't really looking at or examining what their sexual orientation even looked like, that now they have this like time to kind of sit down and be with themselves and be in their bodies and kind of reflect on that. And from, depending on what your family dynamics look like, or your house looks like, or your support in your life looks like, that was really challenged during COVID-19 and continues to be a challenge for people, but particularly if you're in the confines of like 4 walls, where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm examining this. How do I feel about this? And what if there's not somebody that I feel comfortable, talking about or exploring this with? Not everybody feels comfortable getting on a virtual platform. And so even if those services have been or are available, not everybody wants to do that. That doesn't feel the most connecting to them. So we met back in, what was the day? It was April 22nd. We held a needs assessment just to kind of look at people that were interested in this. Maybe they experienced hardships during COVID-19, or they wanted to share their experiences and what they felt would have either been helpful to them or what was helpful to them while they were going through the big part of COVID-19, where it was like, you can't go anywhere, you're kind of on lockdown, lots of places are closed. Coping skills that before would have been helpful, like maybe shopping or going and eating really good food, weren't as accessible as they would be if you weren't in a pandemic. So what came out of that was the ask of having more information around alcohol use. What does it mean if I start drinking more? What is that? I might not have that self-awareness yet. And so even though what I would consider to be kind of that nightcap or that take the edge off, today was a stressful day, I'm going to have, a glass of wine. And then eventually that wine turns into a couple glasses of wine and more days in a row. So the ask was, tell us more about what this means if we are drinking more. And some people just don't know that over time you build up tolerance. They don't understand those things. What Narcan is and what it represents in the community, like what is the biggest population that affects, and where do I get it? Vaccines, information on vaccines. Can I take it? What are the co-occurring things that could be happening to me? Am I eligible, for a vaccine? Relationship issues and challenges throughout, as I talked about a little bit. It's that connection piece is so hard. So we had to get real creative on how we were going to do that. And if we're feeling really, really down and depressed and like isolated and alone, like picking up that 10,000 pound phone is even harder. Helplines, like where can I call? Where can I go if I want to share with another person? Because either A, I live alone and I don't really have anybody else to share my life with when I'm going through big things, or I live in a household where maybe I don't feel like people would understand me if I were to talk with them about what I'm experiencing. So really being able to connect with people who maybe have similar lived experience as I do. Also, if I do figure out that, I would like a little bit more support and help along the way, where would I go to seek out a psychiatrist or a therapist? Also that grief, how do I deal with grief? And there's so many different types of grief, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And additional resources. As Linda mentioned, there's this wonderful book list. Books are my best friend. So I was excited to see this book list by Madison Public Library that they put out. So I encourage anybody, if you love books or even if you just like them a little bit, to check out that book list. Or if you're not a big fan of reading, that you can maybe seek out some Audible options or some books on tape or CDs or something like that, or even do a Spark Notes, which is like a condensed version of what a book would represent, but it'll pick out the key things in there for you. Any questions before I move on from anybody? Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to keep, I didn't want this to feel like it was like a, addiction 101 class or anything like that for people. If you want to know a lot about alcohol, I encourage you to do some of your own research too. But one of the things that really always stands out for me is like how alcohol affects genders differently. So if you were maybe assigned a female at birth, you may have this decrease in an enzyme alcohol. It's a really long word, dehydrogenase, which is hard for me to say, but I'll get through it, right? But that helps our bodies like break down that alcohol. So I could be sitting next to a male assigned at birth person, and then there's me who is assigned a female at birth, and we would drink the same amount. But if I were to blow in like maybe a breathalyzer, we're gonna have different BACs just based on this enzyme that might not be present in women's women assigned at birth bodies. So that I think is always like this thing, and I think that we have a little bit more hormonal response. But I also just want to caution that I don't know yet if you are a person taking T or taking estrogen, that if this wouldn't affect you even differently. I don't know the effects on the body. Alcohol dehydrates you. It may feel like this is, like, man, I'm really thirsty. If I have, a Corona, this is going to quench my thirst. It actually does the opposite. And it actually depletes the water in your body. And so the less water that you have in your body, it takes longer for that alcohol to move through you. So you might be able to process like a drink an hour, but even more so quickly if you have more water in you. So if you have friends maybe that are like, oh, for every drink that I have to have this glass of water. Those are good friends to have around because they'll remind you to hydrate as you're drinking. There's also this concept of tolerance. So if you started off drinking like, once a week, that's going to be different than you start drinking like once a day, and then you increase that to, 3 drinks a day, and then you increase that to 5 drinks a day. Eventually, you're going to need more of that alcohol to achieve that same desired effect that you might have achieved with maybe one glass of wine. You would start, feeling a little buzzed with 1 glass, and now you're finding I need 3 glasses. So that's called tolerance. That's normal. Everybody has that if they drink more often. But then also you kind of run the risk of potentially having withdrawal if you drink for months on end and on a daily basis, and your body is used to intaking a certain amount of alcohol. You run the risk for having withdrawal symptoms, which is your body just kind of like screaming out, saying like, we're used to this, you're taking this away from me. Now I don't know how to be. But the unfortunate thing about alcohol is it's one of the few substances that one can take and experience withdrawal and actually die from the effects of those withdrawals. Benzodiazepines is another one, which is essentially, in layman's terms, a alcohol in a pill form. So it acts on your body in the same way as alcohol does. And so you can also die from withdrawal from benzodiazepines if you're not medically monitored or around somebody, and maybe, doing like a slow taper or replacing that substance with something else that can kind of help you get through those withdrawals. Sometimes people have died while experiencing withdrawal from opioids, but it's usually because they have a co-occurring like underlying health condition or co-occurring health condition, like a blood issue, heart issue, things like that. Not blood issue, but heart issues. So it's rare, it can happen, but usually withdrawal from opioids is really painful and annoying, and it's frustrating. It's a lot of things, but you don't usually have to worry about the risk of dying from opioids, but you feel like you want to die. So let's just put that out there. Also, there are predispositions to alcohol use disorder. So in order to have something called alcohol use disorder, to be considered a person that is dependent on alcohol, you have to fit more than, dependence and withdrawal. You have to have a few more things, like where you're giving up other things for social things. You've had, friends and family members reach out and say, I'm concerned about my drinking, and you're just like, the consequences don't matter because you just want to take more alcohol in, and that's where your mind is at. But there are things that predispose us to that. One is we have a family history of that. I come from a family where everybody in my entire family drinks, and so it was just normal for me growing up as a kid from 5. My family owned a bar too on top of it, which is a great recipe for disaster. So to have that family, whether it be nature versus nurture, again, like we might have those genes, that are passed down, but also, we're being taught that this is an acceptable way of coping with either life stressors, with trauma, with we want to feel happier, and with depression and mental health experiences as well. So the age that we first use has an effect on us too. So our brains aren't fully developed until we're the big age of 25, which even at 25, I don't even know that I had my wits about me at that time. So at 25, our brains are ideally developed, but we're gonna process it a little bit differently. The earlier we start to drink, and our brain is still developing, so 14, 13, 12, 15, it can change the way that our brain kind of sends and receives signals, and also we become a little bit more susceptible to having a dependence on alcohol or any other substances for that matter. But also having experienced childhood trauma. There's a high correlation, very, very high correlation between people that use substances, whether it be alcohol or other things. Oftentimes, alcohol is the first thing that we use. But I know a lot of people that are like, I hated alcohol, I got so sick on it, so I prefer to smoke marijuana, or I prefer to do this. I think that cigarettes were the first gateway thing. But then I learned in my years of doing this work that I think trauma is the gateway to using. Most people have experienced either some sort of neglect, abandonment, huge loss in their life, relationship problems within the household, not feeling like you were loved and supported, connection, attached. Secure attachment is important, but also maybe some sexual assault, whether that be at a young age or in early adolescence, or even later on in adult life. You could also have been in a domestically violent relationship, and throughout that experience too, that could be very traumatic depending on what shows up in that relationship. But that can also seem to be a way out for people, a coping skill for people experiencing trauma. And then also I wanted to talk a little bit about Tula. It's an app that the UW received some funding from NIH, and it's really for people that they're not drinking every day, but they are finding that like on the weekends they're having a little bit more, or they're drinking 3 days a week when they used to only drink 1 day a week, or they're drinking 3 days a month and they used to only drink one. So it's really like a support app for people that want to monitor how they're drinking, and if they want to reduce that drinking, they can set goals within the app. And then there's 3 different cohorts, so it is a research study. There is some reimbursement for participating. Participants can get some reimbursement for that if you qualify for it. But there's 3 cohorts. One is it's just the app. The app is your friend, you log things in your app and you're putting them in there, and you get support from the app, some preloaded stuff. And then another one is the app, as well as like a nurse case manager, like a health coach. And then the 3rd cohort is the app, and then a certified peer specialist on the other line. So they're like interacting with you, and they're giving you support in addition to the app. So there's 3 things. We don't get to choose which one we get put into. It's a randomized study, but I think it's a neat thing to partake in. And even after the study portion of it's over, you still get access to the app. But I'm curious about how well this is going to work, but also I'm looking forward to seeing more and more resources. It's not that when any one of us would prefer to use technology all the time. Some of us would, we're just like, I don't like humans very much, so technology is my friend, or books are my friend. And then other people are like, well, I really like my human interaction, my connection there. So that might not be a good fit for me, even though there might be a human on the other side supporting you through the app. But it's just another tool to add to our toolbox. It's another resource that I think is helpful. And I think that it's never to take away or replace anything else that might be helpful to somebody. It's just to give them something else, to add in there. It's not the end all be all. Any questions about any of this? Comments? Got nothing?
I'd like to make a comment about the Tula program or the Tula app, in that I've a person who probably wouldn't benefit from that, since I'm sober and have a practice of sobriety that's pretty ingrained. But I think it's a program that would be really wonderful for particularly a younger person who's already connected to technology and may not ever consider maybe going to an AA meeting if they were struggling with some issues. I know that some of my friends who've struggled with their weight are using apps like Noom, which have similar kinds of components to it and are having a lot of success. And I know even the Weight Watchers program has introduced some of those elements. So I'm really happy to hear about this new technology, this new app that can help people. So thank you for including that.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. Because I think that, when we think about all that connection, right? Like, it's not just like substance use. It's not just mental health. There's a lot of things and that people just need and want to talk with somebody else who had that experience. I wouldn't necessarily, talk to somebody that has pain that has never experienced pain, or if I have pain, I wouldn't necessarily always want. That doesn't mean somebody who hasn't had pain can't empathize with me. It doesn't mean that they can try to understand what my experience is like. But I do believe that somebody else is like, yeah, I know what that's like. I know how lonely that can be. I know how depressing that can be. I know how it feels to think that I sound like a broken record all the time because I'm complaining or I'm sharing that I'm in pain, and then you want to shut down because you feel like you're being a burden on your friends. I think this is valid for a lot of human experiences, right? Domestic violence and a lot of different things, that the more that we get comfortable with sharing with each other in whatever space that is, whether that be through a technical space, a support group, a Zoom support group, or one-on-one, whatever works for us. We just have to find and figure out what's going to work for us, as well as what feels good for us once we try it. And you can try a lot of different things, right? Like there's not any one thing that makes my recovery great today. It's a lot of things. And so in certain rooms that they would say, like I have like over 7 years sober. But I say, I've been in recovery for 14 years because that was the day I decided to change my life. So that includes those hills and valleys, right? And not so much focused on abstinence or the removal of everything. It's really being able to talk about the experience of I'm no longer like beating my head against this rock, and that's quality of life. My life is more quality today than it was 14 years ago. So next I'm going to talk a little about harm reduction. An estimated 2.1 million people struggle in the US with an opioid use disorder. So the rates of overdose deaths are rapidly increasing. I can say, personally this year in 2021 has been, I feel like I've lost more people in 2021 than I did all of 2020, which still is saying a lot. We've just lost a lot of people, whether that be to overdoses. My family experienced a personal overdose from opioids right before Christmas time, or right before the New Year's. And then, I've lost people to mental health, dying by suicide, as well as COVID-19. So there's like this triple whammy going on in our communities right now. But since 2010, the number of opioid deaths has increased by double, to more than 42,000 people in 2016, and that number just keeps going up. I remember I just did a news segment. They're following up on the overdose death rates, and I was talking about this feels like 2018. Like it feels like when we were just like in the eye of the storm, and we're just losing people left and right. And I feel like I'm just like trying to stand in front of this train that is just barreling down the track, and I can't stop it by myself, right? It's got to be like this collective approach. It's got to be this multi-pronged approach. So part of that is talking about harm reduction. And for me, that's not giving somebody permission that like, oh, I'm saying like here, if you have these tools, that means I'm saying it's okay for you to use opioids. I don't have an opinion on whether or not it's good or bad for you to use opioids. I just want you to be around, and so how do I make sure that you have the tools at your disposal to use throughout that time, so that if and when you ever decide that you do want to do something different, that you're around to be able to do it. And this is Narcan in particular is a life-saving medication. It reverses the effects of an overdose triggered by opioids. It is not it's not something that you take on a daily basis. It's not something that the government decided they were going to give out for free in exchange for something else. It's really like somebody's experienced an overdose and they're medically dead. And unless they have this medication, they will not be revived. They will not live. So it reverses somebody being in that state. It is nasal or intramuscular. So Narcan can be distributed in a nasal form, which is a couple squirts in the nose through this kind of like a spray, like Flonase or something like that. But then there's also the intramuscular. And I've heard, and Joe, you might be able to help me out here a little bit, that the intramuscular, sometimes because it's like a higher dose, that sometimes it helps with the fentanyl that's being found on the streets more. But I know that, many of my EMS friends have had to use more than one dose of Narcan for a lot of people that experience a fentanyl overdose. Joe, did you have?
No, you were correct. With the fentanyl, the intramuscular can reverse it a little bit quicker and more accurately. The only downfall is a lot of people now, with the prevalence of the nasal, a lot of people in the community don't know how to properly use or, do that. So paramedics usually do use the intramuscular if they need to, but.
100%. And I think the community just as a whole, to be like a regular person who doesn't have maybe a substance use history or doesn't know anything about it, to carry that nasal, you will feel more comfortable than like, hey, I gotta like figure out how to, I gotta take this training on how to load up this syringe and stick it in somebody. Like, I just think that comfort level is a little different. Because I promote anybody if you can. I keep some in my purse all the time. Overdoses have happened at Badger games. Overdoses can happen like anywhere. And if I can just be there until the EMS get there with that Narcan to hopefully, save that person's life in the meantime, that's what I recommend. Also, the unfortunate thing is that every substance these days, whether it be methamphetamines, if you're buying benzodiazepines on the street, if you're buying MDMA, which is also known as ecstasy on the street, if you're buying cocaine, did I say marijuana? But pretty much everything, the cartel is using fentanyl and putting it in everything, because fentanyl is a highly potent opioid, but it also, with being a highly potent opioid, it oftentimes brings us back, right? So it'll keep that business flowing. And so the more dependent I become on something that I didn't know maybe that I was using, the more I'll come back. But in addition to that, most people who use opioids may not use other substances. More often than not these days, we are seeing polysubstance, so they're using more than one thing. But if I'm intending on using cocaine, or if I'm intending on using methamphetamines, and that's what I usually use on a daily basis, or however often I use it, I might not have the tolerance, or my body cannot withstand opioid use. And so what happens is that, if I'm taking a substance that I'm intending on ingesting, because that's the drug that I chose, that cocaine, or that's what I usually use, I'm not going to be able to withstand fentanyl entering my body because I have not built up that tolerance. So we're seeing a lot of overdoses occur because somebody is intending to use something else. So if you are, around anybody that uses anything, my suggestion is get your hands on some Narcan. Where do we get that, right? Like, where do I pick that up at? If I'm a person in the community, like, anybody can go to Vivint Health. I added on the phone number here. You can call them. Sometimes they used to, pre-COVID, always bring it to like houses if you wanted. They would drop it off for you. But I do know that they're doing like appointments. You can come in there and grab some. Public health in Dane County also has Narcan. There are also these little boxes that are being put up. They might not be little, they're like about this big, all over in different counties. They're called naloxone boxes, and they are at the Howard Johnson in Dane County, which is down on East Washington in Madison. There's one at the Comfort Inn and Suites on East Washington in Madison. There's one at the Hy-Vee restaurant on East Washington in Madison, lots on East Washington. Can you tell where maybe the hot spots in Dane County might be? There's also a bunch in Milwaukee too, but basically what those boxes do is they're for anybody. If you're like you want to walk into the Hojo or the Howard Johnson and just go grab it, you can. You don't have to fill out anything. You don't have to tell anybody. You just open the box, you take the Narcan, and you can either have it to use for somebody else that might need it, or you might need it for yourself. So if that might be a little bit more discreet if you're not really wanting anybody to know. But I can tell you, Vivint Health and Public Health, they don't ask a lot of questions. They just want to know like simple demographics. They don't want to know your name. They want to know that you're 18, I guess. Although I just did find out from Public Health that you don't have to be 18 in order to receive Narcan there, which is a huge plus for me, because I am constantly advocating for youth services, because there just seems to be, I know there's a lot of gray area with like HIPAA and parental consent and stuff like that, but I'm like, hey, like it's like birth control, like you either get adolescents birth control or you don't. But if you don't, what might happen? So I'm again, parents struggle with like getting Narcan sometimes because they feel like I'm giving my child permission to use, but that's not it. You're just having it as a safeguard in case something happens. And then use kits, clean use kits are like new, of course, unused. They're wrapped in medical wrapping syringes. It includes a cooker, some cotton balls, and you can also ask for a fentanyl test strip. So you can test your, cocaine, your methamphetamines, whatever it is that you're using with these fentanyl test strips to see if there's the presence of fentanyl. So you know what you're getting into. A little bit of education that I like to let everybody know is that, like, please, if you can, don't use alone. If you have to use alone, like you live alone and COVID's preventing you from leaving, but you're gonna use, then call a trusted person and ask them to remain on the line with you while you're using. Don't mix substances if you can. The highest rates of non-rescue overdoses occurred when people are using alcohol with opioids or benzodiazepine with opioids. And other analgesics. So really, like, opioids slow your system down, right? And they slow it down really, really well, your respiratory system. So you add another thing like alcohol or benzodiazepines, that'll slow it really down. Or anything that can be opioids is like fentanyl, but it's also oxycodone, OxyContin, hydrocodone. It can be methadone. So some people are prescribed methadone for pain, and some people are prescribed methadone because they're trying to have a different quality of life. So that's a medication used for opiate use disorder, as well as Suboxone or buprenorphine is another medication used for medication for opiate use disorder. And we don't want to mix benzos with those either, because again, they're going to slow that respiratory system down. So get with your provider or your doctor, ask lots of questions, and if your doctor doesn't make you feel very good about asking those questions, and get a new doctor, because you don't deserve that. Advocate for you to be seen, bring a trusted person with you, bring a peer provider with you, or a recovery coach, or somebody that can be there with you safely, of course. And buy from only trusted people if you can. Like, always go back to the same person that that what you're getting with your money. Any questions on there before I move on? So where can we get vaccines? So I just thought that I would, rather than giving you this like super long list of wherever you can go get COVID vaccines, Public Health, Madison Dane County has this wonderful website, and it really breaks down, if my computer works with me tonight, like everywhere that you can go. You can sign up here, you can book an appointment. So Pfizer has just approved for 12 to 15-year-olds to be able to get vaccinated. You get one vaccine, that's an injection, and then 3 to 4 weeks, depending on which one you get, if it's Pfizer or the Moderna, you'll go back in and you'll get a second vaccine. Some people, feel some effects from that vaccine. They feel a little ill, maybe the first or second or both injection. Usually that means that your body's doing what it should be doing, and it's gearing up, it's preparing itself for the fight of its life, to protect you from anything that from COVID trying to enter into your body. So I think that this is really helpful. It'll give you areas in Dane County, but also like surrounding areas too. So if you're like, oh man, I just want to get in as soon as I can, sometimes you can drive to Rock County, or you can drive to Sauk County. So there are other things available there. So I invite you to, if you are interested in getting this, everybody is eligible now. So you don't have to be like a healthcare provider. You don't have to have like a certain age group. You don't have to have, underlying health conditions. You can just go and book a appointment now. And Wisconsin, I just read, is #1 in the nation for leading for vaccines. So that's pretty exciting. And second in the nation for actually using up, the vaccines that have been sent to us. Any questions there? So relationships, I love relationships. But I say, like until you get in a relationship, you might not always know how to like be in a relationship or learn the things that you need to learn about yourself being in a relationship. But the big ones for us, I think, personally for me, I'm the age that I am, and I didn't come into really exploring my sexual orientation, even though I've been an ally like my whole life, until I was older. And so having that acceptance or love still is important to me from my family members. But it wasn't like I was at risk for like losing my housing or being kicked out or anything like that. So, this time has been a big challenge for people, because where do we go? Where do we go for a teenager? And mom and dad has kicked us out because we came out to them, and that's hard. I've watched some pretty amazing transformations this year with people, really exploring some things and finding the spaces that they need to find in order to get that support that they wouldn't get at home, or maybe even from peers that they grew up with their whole life, knowing them one way, and not being able to kind of shift and use the correct pronouns and things like that. So sibling closeness, so that can have a big effect on us as well, like whether or not I get along with my brothers and sisters. And some siblings, as we know, can be accepting of what we're going through. And somebody asked me the other day, they said, don't you think you give permission to like others when you talk about your sexual orientation or the things that you've gone through? Like, and I was like, are you meaning that like by me showing up and being gay, that means that like I'm telling everybody else they should be gay? They were like, no, like you talking about it gives them permission to explore their own stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of like anything in life, right? Like the more that we talk about it, the more that we're accepted for it on a societal level, the more that we give others permission to explore it and come up with their own conclusions based on that. And I think times have changed a lot. I'm sure that Christy and Linda could tell me, different stories, and even me, and I'm not young, but I'm like middle-aged, and so there's just so many different experiences, and even though things are getting better, they're not the best still, right? And so there's a lot of challenges still. There's a lot of new information, and but I think that people are getting more bold and brave and really stepping out into what they need to do for themselves to take care of themselves. But then there can also be a lot of depression and anxiety that comes from the loneliness and isolation that they might feel by not having family members accept them, or maybe even extended family members. Like mom and dad might accept you and your siblings, but what about Uncle Bob over there? He's still calling you what he always called you, and things like that, and that can be terse and hard as well. And I don't have the magic fix. I don't think that anybody does. I have learned that for me, I had to develop like my own family, right? Like my family, my chosen family, for a number of reasons. Like the family that I was born into is toxic and unhealthy. And I love them, and we have relationships with each other. But I also have to have really firm boundaries. Like it's not okay for you to do certain things around me, or I'm going to remove myself from this situation right now. And then there's other boundaries that we have to set with other people too. Like, I'm not going to allow you to treat me like that. And finding people that, you can go to and feel like you're loved for who you are, no matter what. And we had to find different ways to connect, so TikTok is a big thing throughout this pandemic. Lots of social media, right? Lots of Zoom, and people are feeling kind of zoomed out. I know for me, I spend all day talking on the phone with people that are struggling in the community, or I'm in Zoom meetings. And so sometimes, as Joe probably knows, I'm like, I'm on a no talk, like I'm not picking up the phone for the rest of the night, because I just can't, like I can't hold space for any more stuff today. I still want to hear what you have to say. I just have to do it in a different way, right? It has to be like text or whatever, and saying like, are you okay with that? Or can we just like, is tomorrow going to be okay to like have this conversation? So like really being able to take care of ourselves is important, and feel like we can, but that doesn't always happen. So what do we do if we don't feel like we can? And we'll talk a little bit about those helplines and other things where maybe we can get the support that we need. And then throughout the pandemic, I don't know about you all, but if I'm in these four walls, and my kids are in these four walls, and my partner's in these four walls, and that's like the only people that I'm seeing and interacting with like pretty consistently for months on end, the natural like frustrations and irritations kind of come out, or they seem real magnified, because it's like, I just need a break. So a lot of relationship issues have come up like throughout this, whether that be like, my partner did start using substances because that's, like introspective, right? Like I have to be in my body now because I'm forced to be in my home, and I have childhood trauma or adolescent trauma or adult trauma that I haven't dealt with or worked through, or even know that I have, and I'm responding to all the things happening in my environment right now from that perspective, and I don't even know it. And so there's that, and then there's that like reacting, right? And I've seen people who were pregnant during the pandemic, and I'm like, oh, that's, like their partners just really crawling the walls, trying to get away from what's going on in their household. So those partners, also our friends, intimate relationships. My friendships have changed a lot over this year. Not like who I'm friends with, just like how it shows up, because sometimes I'm so burnt out from, helping like a community that's, to me, feels like it's on fire sometimes. And then also like, I really need that, sometimes when I'm having my own stuff, like who do I turn to, right? And so making sure that I know to reach out to my friends when I have that, and asking for help. That's not always the easiest thing for me to do. And I know it's not the easiest thing for a lot of trauma survivors to do. So the friendships have changed. Sometimes if we're not able to like hang out, we got creative throughout the pandemic, doing like online poker games and things like that. It's hard, but it's something. And I think that's a lot of that's kind of fizzled too, because it's like, man, we're over this. We just want to go hiking or biking or roller skating or roller derbying or do a football game. Like there's all these things that we want to do. And that, again, it's just about like connection. How do we connect with people in different ways, and how do we honor that like this sucks, right? It just sucks. Like there's a lot of things right now, and this is hard, and being able to name that and voice that. And then even like our coworkers, not working in the office, working from home more, that work-life balance, right? Like if I live in the place that I work, how do I separate that? And how do I recreate new boundaries and what that looks like? But also we're not able to like connect with our colleagues as much. So if we're only like reading emails or text messages from colleagues more often, we're like, are they trying to irritate me? Like, are they picking on me? Because we're not hearing tone. We're not like seeing facial expressions. We're just like already in like some space, like feeling a certain way, and then we get this thing and like they weren't meaning it. So I've gotten better about like picking up the phone and be like, did I understand this right? because to be honest, there's some people I probably never want to talk to again, and not like on my team or anything, but people I have to interact with because I like assume that they're like meaning something. And then I'm like, okay, slow down. Like, what did you really mean to do this? And so it's just taking a lot more effort because we can't always feel emotion. We can't always see empathy, from somebody through like an email or a text. And so we have had to try a little different. So how do we heal from this, right? How do we heal from relationships? Who do we reach out to? I listed the most local ones that I have. So Safe Communities, we offer recovery coaches and certified peer specialists for people experiencing mental health experiences like suicidal ideation at UW Hospital. They can be linked up with, but mostly we work with families and people experiencing substance use disorder. So that you can go on our website. They are working on it, just a little disclaimer. They're making it prettier, they're changing it. And they're gonna be adding on like housing. We have some on there, but we have an updated list, hopefully it's getting bigger, not smaller, but it is Dane County, stranger things have happened. And then also a treatment map, which I'll talk a little bit about that when I get to the resources and therapists and psychiatrists part, because that's important to how to be able to kind of navigate those things. There's a lot of insurance companies in Dane County. And so I want to be able to like say, here's where you would go to get these services, right? Recovery coaches and certified peer specialists currently are not, they're not billed under insurance. If a person is already working with CCS, they can request one through their CCS provider. But mostly you just get a recovery coach by calling a recovery coach helpline. And then it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week right now. But it's free. It's no charge to you. We're not going to ask for money. It's voluntary, self-directed care. We don't want to like do anything that you don't want to do. This other cool one, and where's my little cursor? Where did it go? Why can't I see it? I might have to escape out of there because, okay. There we go. This is a really cool resource that just started this year. I had the humbling experience of training the peer specialists working under this program. It's through Mental Health of Wisconsin, and it's for LGBTQ people in our community, but also youth services, which is something we like just don't have enough of. They have support groups, but they also have this wonderful warm line here. And even though it's based out of Milwaukee, it's for Wisconsin, residents. You can be anywhere in Wisconsin and use this. And I'm just so excited about this because it's for, my sub community and it's very specific. And I just think that I do work on a crisis line, and I do get calls from all types of people, and not everything is everybody's cup of tea. So again, it's about offering up, having more access to resources because not everybody's going to call up outreach or look at outreach and stuff, and not everybody's going to call crisis. But the more information that people have to be able to get their needs met. And I get so many people that call, and I just feel like they're not suicidal, but they just want somebody to listen, and they've gone through experiences that some people don't understand. So to be able to really talk with somebody who can say like, I've been through that, or I know what that's like. I don't know your journey, but I know what it's like is really helpful. In Dane County, we also have a Solstice House Warm Line, which is also ran by certified peer specialists. Currently, they're offering Zoom meetings too, if you're interested. So that's a new thing that they're doing as of this year. So that's exciting because they were kind of shut down for a little while too, which I think was the biggest barrier. Like we have COVID-19, this is hard, and then also there's no resources during the time, so for quite a while, so people couldn't see their therapists, and like people couldn't go to school, and that might have been where they got their food or they got the support that they needed. And yeah, it's just been a year for all of us, right? And then of course Dane County Crisis, reaching out if you're feeling like you're in a mental health crisis, and you're looking for either support or a way to get hospitalization or your medical needs met through that experience. And then also United 211, United Way 211 is just such a wonderful resource for Dane County, but also throughout Wisconsin. So you can pretty much call up these folks and say, this is what I need. This is what I'm looking for. And they'll get you to where you need. I can't guarantee that it's always going to be LGBTQ plus friendly. But I think that they have in their database, they kind of aggregate things to where would be helpful. And so they do, you can say like, I want, you know, to work with an agency that has this ability or accepts me as open and affirming. And they can get you to places if they have that service for our population. Any questions there? Linda, I'm running a little late. Is that okay? Should I? Oh, I can't hear you, dear.
The only concern I have is I'm not familiar enough with Zoom, whether they're going to cut us off or not.
Oh.
So I think we can risk continuing because
Okay.
this is really valuable information. But before I mute myself again, I just want to make sure, first of all, I want to thank you because this has been really helpful and it's rich with information. And I just want to make sure that you'll be able to send me this presentation.
Oh, yeah.
So we
For
can
sure.
post it on the website.
Of
Because
course.
this is just really, these are great tools and resources.
Yep,
So
that's why I did it, so that you could have this, and then this people can click on the links and they don't have to like go and, you know, search
Right.
it. They can just go right into it. Yep, absolutely.
So I'm just going to suggest that if somebody does need to leave, please do. I want to thank Tanya, and please, we're welcome to stick around and for however long this takes. So I know you've got a couple more slides, so I'm game for seeing that we can stay with this until, I'm thinking if they're going to cut us off, there'll be a warning that pops up on my screen as the host. So
Yeah.
then I will let everybody know, and then we can wrap up if we need to. So I'm going to say continue.
Awesome. Thank you. Right, so mental health services. Out Health does provide some in Madison, more in the way of like substance use. I'm pretty sure that, you know, eventually they'll do more there. This is just a phenomenal resource to have in our community. I am just enamored with Dr. Oriole, just so funny, so personable, and just somebody that I wish, you know, I could hang out with more. So if you have questions, a place to feel comfortable, that somebody that works and serves our community, check it out, you know. And then there's Psychology Today. So why I bring this up is there are agencies in Dane County that work with people with mental health or substance use issues. However, because we have so many different layers and so many different insurance companies, I would have to put together an exhaustive list to help meet your needs, because every place is different. You know, they're going to have courts, they're going to take courts. Courts in particular, while we're on that subject, is you actually have to call them and figure out, you know, where to go. But they're pretty good through their behavioral health, and they don't actually have any therapists listed on Psychology Today. But the cool thing I like about Psychology Today is a number of things. I can go in here, I can choose my zip code, and then I can aggregate it towards my needs. So I can choose my insurance company, and then I can choose my, like, the issues or people that, you know, want to work with certain types of things. So I can say like this, I want to work with somebody that understands transgender. I want to work with somebody who understands depression, ADHD, and then it'll give me everybody who kind of works with all of those things, as well as, I have Anthem, and then what I want to do is I want to send, every last one of these. Oh, and the other thing is, because I think like pictures do a lot, even though it's not like the best, but like I can feel energy, right? Like through that, and I can be like, wow, that looks great. Like I think I could have a conversation with that person. It's not everything, right? You can always request to, which I don't think people know, is kind of an interview with a potential therapist. You can go in and meet with them for like a half hour, and you can feel usually like, I don't think that's going to be a good fit for me, or wow, I got really good feelings. I think I could get some work done with this person. So I encourage you to, check it out, see what your needs are. look at everybody. Don't judge a book by its cover, obviously. Maybe read the bio, because sometimes that speaks more to me than the actual pictures. It tells a little bit about each person. And then send a few, that might speak to you, a message, and just say, hey, do you take my insurance, and can I come see you for this half-hour interview or whatever. Oh, and finally, this grief, this notion of grief. Linda probably knows I've been talking a lot about it, because I just feel like it's this like taboo thing in our society. Like, we experience big things and we're just supposed to deal with it or pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and move on and get over it. And people try to put timelines on how long you get to feel sad for, or what you get to feel sad about. And it's interesting to me, because I remember, like, growing up, people would be like, oh, somebody lost their cat and they're crying over their cat. And I'm like, I would be devastated if I lost my cat. Like, my cat is like my partner in crime, yeah, it's a cat, like, it's a soul to me, So just like those different things, and just letting people like grieve what they want, even if you have a loss of relationship and everybody was like, well, that was a horrible relationship for you. Does that mean you didn't give that person time or energy or space, or give them a piece of you that you should just like move on? No, that's real. Like, honor it, feel those feelings, talk about them, keep them, in the memory, or not, whatever you have to do to get through the grief, because grief shows up as anger. You can go to a rage room or something, or go out and throw balls at cans, or I choose to throw rocks in the lake. And just feel the feelings, and have those trusted people in your life to be able to talk about that. And also, like, let others feel their feelings. That's a big thing. Loss of pets, huge. Loss of employment. I've seen people that worked at places for years and have them go under this last year, and that's devastating. That's challenging. I live in gratitude every day of my life that things are different for me today, but I can empathize, because I've had loss of employment before myself and things like that. Not knowing whether or not you're going to have food on your table, or be able to pay your rent. Like, that's real, and that's challenging. And there's a lot of different feelings that people go through. Loss of loved ones due to suicide this year, due to COVID-19, loss of loved ones due to substance use, and then the feeling of loss of freedom. That was a big deal. And I think, this Kubler, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she actually wrote this wonderful article, actually, her and David Kessler, they did an article on actually the stages of grief with COVID. And that was, if you have a chance, like, look it up. I know we're kind of out of time, or I would show it to you. But the 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Those don't go in a circular motion. It doesn't mean like I go from denial to anger. They're like all over, the place. And there's no timeline, right? It doesn't mean like I'm in denial for 2 days and then I'm in anger for 5 and then I'm in bargaining. No, they happen when they happen. I lost my brother to suicide 14 years ago. And I still, like, in large part today, I live in acceptance, but that doesn't mean I don't have moments of anger. That doesn't mean that I don't have moments of depression. And there's other times too, where, it was, like, I still think about that bargaining. So get to know the stages of grief, be gentle with yourselves, normalize this, help other people get through theirs. Like, we're all going through it. We might just be experiencing different things that we're grieving over this past year. But we're all grieving, different things. So, and then LGBTQ specific resources in Wisconsin, Planned Parenthood has a wonderful list. And again, I didn't want to put it up there because I like to put my props out there for my supporters, which is Planned Parenthood is a big one. So there's the Wisconsin Transgender Health Coalition, Diverse and Resilient, it's called, and you can click right on these and it'll bring you to the resource. Milwaukee LGBTQ Community Center, G-Safe, PFLAG, Transgender Youth Resource Network of Wisconsin, Wisconsin Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Trans Law Help Wisconsin, Wisconsin Coalition Against Sexual Assault, Wisconsin Department of Health Services, Vivint Health, LGBT Chamber of Commerce, ACLU of Wisconsin, Forge Wisconsin, and then of course, Outreach. And then there's another resource through the Community Action Coalition, and this is called Project Recovery. So this is about helping Wisconsin through a pandemic. CAC has just amazing resources there, wonderful, dedicated, authentic, kind people that work there that really just want to see people on the other side be the best version of themselves. So they can help with anything, you know, having like transpired from COVID, that anxiety, anger, prolonged mourning. Many of us lost people throughout the pandemic that we weren't able to maybe go to their funerals, or their funerals were weird and we didn't get much closure if we had losses. I mean, there's just so much, right? And feel those feelings however we need to, you know, pick up those helpline numbers and call people. And you know, sometimes it's easier to just talk to a stranger, you know, no judgments. There's no judgments usually on those helplines. And they have some skills and talents that have been given to them and that they're using, and really just like unload and get it out, you know, like pain shared is pain lessened. And then areas that we found of advocacy that came out of the needs assessment. And we just kind of know this stuff, right? We need safe housing for our community. We need safe treatment options for our community. LGBTQ, like to be able to just go to a place, whether that be statewide or whatever, and get a directory out to our community to say, like, here's where you can go for these needs. Outreach has a great one, I think, for Dane County stuff. And I think it's on their website as well, all those providers and the different things that they do. And then another thing that was suggested is talking about a resource summit for LGBTQ plus affirming and open agencies, to have them all like kind of show up and be like, because that warm handoff works so much better, right? If I know somebody that goes somewhere, works somewhere, I can say like, hey, I know Misty, she works at Outreach and you should go see her, Christy. Sorry, I didn't mean to. And then and that works differently than just saying, hey, go call Outreach, you know, like I don't really know anybody. So being able to like put a name to faces and introduce people and get to know them. I know like that's a huge part of Joe's work. Like he just lets himself be known all over the community so that he, with the people that he's working with, and I'm speaking for you right now, that he can say like, I know Doc so-and-so, and I know that Doc so-and-so is gonna show up for you. So maybe try them out. And that doesn't mean, again, that it's always going to work out, because, you know, what I like and what Linda likes isn't always going to be the same thing. But it does kind of soften up that a little bit of that anxiety, that vulnerability, and trying new things. And then again, you know, use services. We just need more for our youth, so that when they come into that adulthood and they're feeling more supported and loved and cared for, that they have a better chance of not, you know, going through all those feelings of suicide or stepping into substance use or other things that happen to them. I think that's it.
Well, I want to thank you, Tanya. That was more than I expected. I mean, I'm going to go back and revisit your presentation, and I'm going to click on a lot of those links. So I'm so grateful that we were able to find time to have you find your time to join us, because I know that you are very busy right now in your personal life and in your professional life as well. We'll put this on the website, and I will also put the recording on the website. And if for some reason, I'm going to try to see if I can also send you and the people who were participating in this workshop a link separate from what's on the website too. So I will do an email to everyone, since I have your email addresses. I don't have yours, Joseph. Do you want to give me your email address?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, that sounds good. And that way, I will send everyone the link for this recording, and I will send you an email notifying you when the tools and resources are loaded up on our website, so that you can tell other people to visit as well. So I'm gonna, oh, you've got an easy email address. I'm glad, because
mine.
I sometimes, I not only transpose numbers, I transpose letters. So this was helpful.
Me too.
So great. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share, particularly for Tanya, before we close the meeting?
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, Tanya, you exceeded my expectations, and I shouldn't be surprised by that because you have every time I've talked with you. So thank you so much. And good luck, everyone, and stay in touch. I'm grateful that I will be able to stay in touch with all of you. So
Yeah,
thank you for
ditto.
being part of my recovery community, and part of my post-pandemic road forward. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
And
Linda. Bye,
Tanya,
Chrissy. Good to
I
see
will-
you.
Good to
I
see
will
you too,
connect
Tanya.
with you too.